Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us today. As way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hi, Brian. Pleasure to talk to you. My name is Brian McVicker. I'm the VP of Sales here at Payroll Network. Been in sales and sales leadership for since I got out of college. And presently today, I work with helping business owners with challenges they have related to HR and payroll, and leading the team here in the Mid Atlantic. So it's been great.
Cool. And what was it about sales that attracted you?
I think initially, my background, I'm a pretty competitive person. So competition was something that I liked, and obviously compensation as well. And I like working and trying to help people resolve challenges in their day-to-day life. And, if I can help people, it helps me put my head down on the pillow and know that I did a good job at the end of the day.
Cool. And how'd you get good at it? How long did it take? And what was that journey like?
I think, I think it came kind of naturally to me, even as a, working part-time in college. I was having some sales roles in retail, and I had a lot of success with it. I seemed to gravitate to that. So when I graduated college, I moved on to an organization and was in a sales position there. And as I did that, it did pretty well there, and they moved me into a leadership position, and that's where I really started to thrive, was helping sellers to achieve their personal goals. Yeah. And I was hiring people directly out of college that maybe they had a waitressing or a bartending job. That was their sales experience, right? And then turning them into professionalisms and being able to sell to customers and upgrade services, and it just became a lifelong passion for me from there.
And you seem to stick to the easy stuff.
What's easy? There's nothing easy in sales.
Easy. Well, your space is hyper competitive, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So in the payroll and HR space, it's very competitive, a lot of really large, well-ingrained competition. And, I think that I use that to my advantage as well. So, if you think about it, many years ago, you'd have to go to a large company to get really technology, but you'd lose on the service. And if you wanted great service, you had to go to a local firm. And fortunately, where we are today at Payroll Network, we have great technology that we can provide to someone, but also give them that local or regional service that they're accustomed to getting from a company.
Cool. And what do you look for when you're hiring salespeople?
Looking for, I think salespeople, I'm looking for someone that fits kind of the sales DNA, someone that is competitive, they're financially motivated, they are motivated by recognition. So, you need some of those inside DNA that they have the ability to do the job. I think for me, sales is about having some sort of fundamental process. So I have my own methodology that I choose to use, but it's important for me to know that as a seller, you've used some sort of methodology that's been successful, because ultimately that's what you're going to revert to when the times are tough, right? You miss your quota a month or two in a row, you're going to say, I'm not going to listen to the leader, I'm going to go back to what I know worked. And so I want to know that you have a strong methodology, that you understand how to present a product or services. And, I'm really also looking for people that, for my type of company, we're not a churn and burn shop. We're looking to bring in clients for a lifetime, and that's why we have such a strong retention rate. So we're looking for people that actually care about the clients that they're working with. The majority of my business comes through partner relationships, and for a partner, I'm representing them. So I need someone that is going to be able to, make them look good, right? We offer the ability to complement the services they're already providing to their clients, and often they trusted me to be an extension of their firm. So I'm looking for someone that I can trust in that way as well. And
where did you develop your methodology? Because I think it's key that somebody have something.
Yeah, I think years of experience, so I think early on I worked out of college for the same organization for 14 years. And so when I moved from there, I moved into this space 10 years ago. And that was a national competitor that had their own methodology. And the way that I look at it with that company is that, you weren't really encouraged to color outside the lines. And one of the things that I'm great at is a little creativity. I like to color outside the lines, right? And so I've always found ways to maybe improve my process or their process, and they weren't necessarily willing to look at that methodology. So as I moved into other roles, the thing that I was able to carry with me is that I did spend time moved out of leadership and into an individual contributor role. I think that's what makes me a little more unique. I moved into the individual contributor role. I did that for 5 years. I was a top rep in the Mid-Atlantic for 5 years, first one to reach the top recognition level, which is top 1% in the country. And what I did is when I moved into a leadership role, I took everything that I learned and said, let's try to replicate this process because I know it works. And so that's what I tried to build as I moved on to other companies, build something that was repeatable and scalable and that I could easily train. And then as I trained it, it was able to then easily check and make sure that we're validating the procedures that we're doing, and it seemed to work.
And what was missing from the previous? Was it too rigid? Was it too?
Yeah, I think rigid would be a good way to say, their way works, and they weren't really necessarily looking to see creative ways to maybe do things a little bit different. When you're a successful company that's been around for decades, you stick to your playbook, and I get that. And that's what kind of thrived for me being at a small company like I am today, because everything starts and stops with me as the VP of sales. And so I'm able to put my footprint on it, and it's my program, and we operate it the way that I think is fit. But we're also very nimble. So I'm not someone that's stringent as I'm traveling in one direction. I always say it's leadership is a navigation, right? We've left the port, we're headed to hit our annual quota, and we're headed in the right direction. And there's going to be small changes to the navigation along the way. But at the end of the day, we have the same goal that we're stretching to. And I'd like to have the flexibility to make changes as things change in the marketplace. Something crazy like COVID happens in the middle of a pandemic. You gotta be able to swiftly change course based on market factors, competitive situations. A lot of things could happen. I have turnover in my organization, and I need to be able to make those changes quickly and be able to regroup.
And when you think of methodology, do you think, is it steps, or is it what you say during the meeting, or is it both? I
think it's both. I think it's having a structure around what the steps are. And then what I try to do for my group is provide them with word tracks in how to open a conversation, how to work themselves through those steps. But everyone, I'm not a dictator in where you have to say what I say, but I'd like to give direction in terms of, so someone doesn't have to start from ground zero, right? So you can put your own creativity and spin on those word tracks, but let me tell you what I think has worked based on my years of experience, what I might say in that situation, what I've used previously, depending on what that might be. So I'd like to provide in my sales meetings word tracks that people can use, templates that they may use, and I show that they work for me. So, and I think that's where you get some user adoption as a seller, because the seller always, they always think that they can do it better on their own, right? They're the lone wolf. And what I've tried to show in my years of leadership is that I've done that job. I've done it before, and I've done it successfully, and I still do it today. Let me show you what's working for me. And it's not always about what worked for me 5 years ago. It's about what's working for me this quarter, this month, this week, because I'm so active in the sales process. It's field relevant leadership. And that's really, what I try to strive for. It's being a field relevant leader, a captain that's on the field, and helping the team to move the ball forward.
And what do you see the biggest hiccups when someone gets into sales between becoming like an A player from a B player?
I think, it's sales. It's about, in my world, sales is about timing and urgency, right? So you have to reach the prospect at the right time, at the right level of urgency. And oftentimes that takes a very dedicated prospecting method. And for me, I use a very dedicated prospecting method that enables that I touch people enough that I catch them at the right time, And I think oftentimes in sales, people, they get down on the fact that I'm not having instant success. And there is no instant success, right? You can have some luck, the harder your work, the luckier you get. But really, at the end of the day, the harder your work, the more opportunity you may have to catch someone with the right timing and urgency that has budget and authority. And now you have a potential sale in your pipeline. I think the other challenge that sellers have is that they get honed in or held up on that I got one and it's really going to happen. And I know that I've seen, a deal can always go sideways until the paperwork is signed and it's through implementation. So trying to keep as many opportunities in the fire as possible. I'm all about keeping pipeline management very tight and crisp, and then moving folks along. Time kills all deals, right? So trying to keep things through the pipeline as urgently as possible. Once someone has determined that they do have, timing, urgency, budget, authority.
And in your business, you're waiting for that window of renewal. Is that the timing piece?
There's not necessarily renewals in our world, because most of the contracts that we work with are on basically a month-to-month basis. What we see from a timing standpoint, traditionally most folks will look at switching a provider at a quarter or at the year, clean on a calendar year. However, I can't make money if people are only switching the payroll services in January, right? So I have to prospect throughout the year, and the timing oftentimes becomes maybe one of those trigger events. So there's a new HR, or CFO that's in the company. They could have an issue or a challenge with their existing provider. They might be looking to add on a new technology. So one of those trigger events is more about what the timing is for me. And, I could tell you many, many times where I've called someone and they say, I'm so glad you called me today. I was just thinking about you. And that's just, timing. In fact, that happened to me earlier this morning where a vendor called me and said, hey, you told me you wanted to reevaluate after the new year. And I said, well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I was looking for your number yesterday. So I'm glad that you called me, and let's, get some time on the calendar. So.
And how do you be persistent without being annoying?
Yeah, I call it pleasantly persistent. So, I do quarterly check-ins with all of the target accounts that I've developed. And usually what I do is I pleasantly ask for permission for a follow-up. So I'll give them a time frame and say, I wanted to check in with you and, see if this is something you wanted to look at in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months. That tells me what type of urgency might be out there. And they say, check back with me, whenever. Or if I get to a point where I know that I'm starting to lose them, I say, I will follow up with you in February unless I hear from you sooner. And then my follow-up process in February is really easy because I don't remember everyone that I've had a conversation with, but I'll call them and say, hey, you asked me to call you on January 14th, 2022. I wanted to let you know I didn't forget about you. And even if they don't realize, even if they didn't, they'll thank me. They'll say, oh, wow, you did exactly what you said you were going to do. So yeah, so I just want to check in, see how things were. This was a good opportunity for us to evaluate and start the process. And I think it's about being pleasantly persistent. And I'm not forcing them to book an appointment. I'm not going to schedule an appointment with someone that doesn't have a need. There's so many prospective opportunities out there. I'm just going to continue to make calls and check in with them. And eventually I'll catch them at a time where they'll answer and say, you know what, I'm fed up with my current service, or we've added a new contract in which we have 50 new employees and I need some help, or, we had a turnover in our HR department and now's a good time. So you just never know when it could be an opportunity to, spark some interest.
Yeah. And how did you come up with it? Did you have a particular system when you were a rep to keep track of what worked and what didn't work, and instead of just dialing and smiling and dialing all day?
Yeah, I think it was from experience. So, when I first went out of leadership and into the field, just like everyone else, I started with zero pipeline, right? And I got a family to feed, and I knew that wasn't going to last very long. So I started with what I felt like were the hottest of the coldest prospects. So I got a list of every single person that any other rep had touched in the last 2 years. I got a list of every client that had left our services in the last 2 years, and I just started calling them all. And what I found really quickly was that there's like quarters in the couch cushions that no one ever looks for, right? So I would get people on the line. They're like, oh my God, I'm so glad you called. I was trying to find the number for the previous rep. Or, oh my God, the permits just went through and now I'm ready to open my business. So I started finding these quarters in the couch, and I was like, I should do this all the time. And so that started it. And then I started to see that it worked, that, I would catch people and they're like, well, it's just not the right time for this. And I say, great, no pressure on my end. I'm here when you need me. I'm not going anywhere. So I'm going to follow up with you in the next quarter. unless I hear from you sooner. And then that became a little bit of that follow-up process where it was the pleasantly persistent. Once a quarter, I do the quarterly touches with all of my folks that I identified as target prospects for me. And so when I moved out of an individual contributor, I realized that sort of worked. Like, let's develop a target list of potential prospects that fit my profile. I'm not profiling outside of that. And let's just try to stay in touch with them. And you catch them at the right time with the right level of urgency. And now it's time to make a move.
Because that analytical part is rare in a salesperson.
It is, yeah. I think it's one of the things that separated me. When I was sitting in my 3-sided carpeted cube with all of my peers, people would come to me and ask me for advice. And a lot of the advice they would ask me was that they would see that I was very disciplined, I was analytical, and I was organized. And they would say, how did you keep yourself organized? And I said, well, it just came naturally to me. So I tried to look at and analyze something I guess it's the operational mindset that I have. I wanted to be able to develop some sort of process that was replicatable. That way I'm not doing a treasure hunt, right? Going from place to place, looking under rocks, trying to find people that might be potential prospects for me. That's never a good or fun sight. And I think early on, I needed to build some of that telemarketing and email prospecting prowess because I hadn't built a partner program. And what sort of differentiated me is if you fast forward a year or two later, I had built such a strong partner program that my phone would ring off the hook. I knew at any given day that someone was going to call me and it was going to be my next sale. So it was kind of one of the things. I'd be talking to a rep and they'd be like asking me questions and say, oh, pause for a second. Here's my next sale calling. I'd pick it up and it would be a referral from someone that says, hey, I got your number from such and such. And what separated me is that I didn't live off of that. That was the icing on the cake. I continued with the same process that I always had with prospecting into the database that I had and try to find opportunity where I could. So it was a matter of sort of building blocks, I guess, of trying to get more and more. And that's what was able to help me scale from being, an above quota rep to a top 10% rep to a 1% rep, was that I continued to work my tail off and do everything that I could to try to find people that were willing to meet with me.
Yeah, because most reps and leaders, they come up with lots of activity. But if
Right.
the activity isn't well thought out with the right people in the right way at the right time, it's just activity.
Yeah, I was never a fan of doing something just to do it, right? So if you're going to do it with a purpose. And I fundamentally believe that with sellers, because you could hear it on the other end of the phone. If I'm just doing something to get through because my boss told me to make a call, right? My boss told me to call 20 people and see if they're willing to take an appointment, I'll do that. But if I did it with a purpose and with a very intentional effort, then I seem to have better results. And for me, I'm about with my team investing in the right activities that are revenue generating. So what I'd like to do is show my team that you can do this and it's revenue generating. I also like to show them some of the tips and tricks and some of the methodology that I built that saves them time. So to a salesperson, time is money. So if I can show them a way that they can be more organized or efficient to work their pipeline or to have their follow-up cadence so that they can catch people at the right time and it actually saves them time, saves them effort, then they're willing to buy into it. And once they see that they actually have results, then you got them lock and step.
And people tend to look at pipeline the wrong way.
Yeah.
Because in your business, if they're qualified and there's some hint that they'll open to switching, that's prospect. Yeah,
absolutely. And for me, I think prospecting and pipeline are two different things. So, it's one of the things that I really tend to focus on is that I want to make sure that, prospecting is someone that is in my world that meets my ideal client profile, that is in my target audience. And that's one type of individual. And then once I've sort of got them into my web, then I'm going to continue to work them through my process until they become a client, right? So they work their way in and they become that. And then the pipeline management to me is about actual opportunities, those that are in a buying process. So when you look at my pipeline, I don't have people in there that are check back with me in April, like touch base at the end of the next quarter.
Yeah.
I close them and I put in a re-engagement date and a reason, and then they're back in my pipeline. So I created all these little tools when I was a seller so that I had tasks that would come in and reminders. I would go to a telemarketing session on a Monday or a Friday, and I would have a list of like 80 people that I needed to touch base with. Meanwhile, the reps were relying on their sales manager to give them a cold list of people that they pulled out of some prospecting thing to make calls to. And they're like, well, how do you do that? And I said, well, I'm constantly making phone calls all the time so that I build a list. And then when the time comes that I need to, I already have people I need to follow up with. I'm not relying on someone else to provide me and what I think are like, a needle in a haystack.
And have you found it easier to hire people without sales experience?
I think what I do today, my methodology as I moved into leadership in this industry was to find folks that were already have industry experience. Reason being is if you think about like what I do, as a seller, I'm not going to go out to find someone that isn't already outsourcing and try to convince them to outsource. That's the toughest sale that you could. Let me just find someone that's already with someone else and position what makes me different, right? Yeah. So I'm able to go and find someone that may be with one of the other competitors that has already invested their time and energy into training that person and getting them acclimated to the industry. And what I'm able to do is show them what kind of differentiates our service, what makes us different as an organization, and show them that there's a different way. Because many people are like me. I'm crazy. I've made this my chosen profession, where a lot of people will come in, they get a taste of it, and they move on to something else, right? And that's what made me different as I was going out and meeting with my targeted trusted advisors, because the people from some of the other companies, they were like, they'd pull the cards out of their desk and they're like, I've had 4 reps in the last year and you seem to be here for years. And I said, well, this is my chosen profession and I'll be here as long as you need me. And so as I've done that, as I find individuals, I find those that, they've chosen this to be what they like to do. They're a little crazy like me, and that they kind of like payroll, HR, and the types of buyers that we're working with, and feel like they can solve their challenges on a day-to-day basis with technology or with support. And we show them what's different with our offering than the competitors. And it's a little bit more plug and play.
And how long does it take them to buy into this? Because they probably need to see it work.
Yeah, fortunately, I think a lot of it is a matter of, there's always a ramp up period with anybody. So within 90 days, you should be ramped up, in this type of environment where we have a sales cycle that's between 30 and 60 days, so your first month, you're understanding the technology, the platform, the product, the services that we offer, what our process might be. And then it's a pretty quick ramp to be able to get prospects, because that's really what I'm relying on from the sales individuals, is that I want them to bring in prospective clients. And then I, as a sales leader, can help them through, working through, moving them through the sales process to ultimately become a client.
And HR people are not exactly the trailblazers in companies, right?
Yeah. Well, I think HR people, they have their people at heart, right? And they want to make sure that their employees are happy and their company is happy. And oftentimes what I've found is that HR folks see that there's technology that can help them engage with their workforce. And that's really a lot of the items that we're talking about today are about making a better presentation for a new hire, from electronic onboarding and how that process might be through an LMS or engagement products that help them to create a better workforce, because there's a lot of turnover these days, in the country. And if you're able to keep people, then, that helps the HR team for sure.
And so you attribute your success to your system?
Yeah, I think so. It's worked.
Well, so what I like about it is a lot of people attribute it to personality or some innate thing or their curiosity, but the system is right.
Systems, well, it's replicatable and it's scalable. So, when I moved into field leadership, I was able to kind of work out this process, and then, simply when I moved into other positions, just replicate that on another level, on another scale. And so when I came to this organization, it was the same thing as building the fundamentals, build the foundation of what you do on a day-to-day basis, build yourself an operating rhythm of how you might be doing it, and then you can easily scale and train it. And then it gives you the ability to then also, hold people accountable and help them through the process.
And since you were so successful, why move into leadership? Why not just continue crushing it?
I was in leadership for such a long time and I missed it, so I missed being able to help others achieve those same types of results. So, I found myself becoming like a quasi mentor to a lot of the other individual contributors. And I missed that part. And there was a big difference. When I always would kind of joke a little bit. When I was a sales leader, someone asked me for advice. I'd have to find it. Well, what would you do? I'd have to role play. Here's how you would handle it. Coach them through the process, right? And then I'd have to follow up. Did you have that call? How did it go? And when I was an individual contributor, someone would ask me my advice. I'd say, well, this is how I would do it. And then I would open up my drawer, and then there was this file that was like not my problem, and then I would close it, and I'd go back to doing what I did successfully. So they either took it or they didn't, and I wasn't obligated for it. But what I found was that I kind of missed being able to be at the end result, to see someone really elevate themselves into something bigger and better. And so I wanted to get back into leadership because I felt I would be able to do that and try to help scale organizations to be able to do that. And that's what I've been doing over the last couple of years.
And how do you keep motivated? Because it's a lot of work and it's not a lot of reward. Because most reps, it's like, okay, you have a discovery call, presentation demo, proof of concept, negotiate, close. And it's like hunting.
Yep. Yeah.
People look at farming like it's bad. It's like, you still eat.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like day to day, I keep interested because there's enough happening to keep me interested all the time, right? And if I don't, something will slip through the cracks, and I never want that to happen either. And I think now that I'm running a sales organization, the interesting part is trying to scale that organization and to show significant growth year over year. And the only way to do that is by building some of these fundamental parts for a sales organization. And then, you get really just in tune and involved in trying to help every one of those opportunities get across the finish line, because I know for my people, they're hungry. They got to eat. And so if I can help them get a deal across the line, it's going to help them professionally, but it's also going to help them personally. And so that's really where my heart is at this point.
And how do you teach them to take their time? Because the natural instinct is to push for a demo or push for a meeting or push for the next step, even though.
Yeah, I always tell them that, prospects can sell, they can smell when you're desperate, right? Soon it comes out as soon as you start pushing for it. And then that kind of makes me wonder, if I'm a prospect, why now? Why this time? So if I'm able to, I'm selling to someone, they're going to move. I can't make someone sign the paperwork. I can't make them move any faster than they are. So all I can really do is help guide them, and I can be there when they need me. And I try to impart upon to my people that their prospect, it's going to be their future client. They're building a relationship, and you got to realize you have to understand what's important to them. And so I always speak to my prospects and or clients in words in which help them understand how I'm able to help. It's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah, cool. Hey, Brian, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you and learn more about you and your company?
Payrollnetwork.com. I'm Brian McVicker. You can find me on LinkedIn.